In this video, I'm going to talk about steps 5 and 6 for how to make a great human, critical thinking, and conflict resolution. Welcome to A Curious Life, where I talk about business, technology, storytelling, and life in general. Step 5. Encourage critical thinking. Informing ourselves about decisions and complex problems is pretty important, especially when it comes to news sources through the media. Whenever that you get any information, a news source, you have to be able to look at it and analyze what's the source, who's saying it, what's their incentive to tell me a certain way, and that can only be gotten with children who have logical thinking at a younger age. Critical thought, being able to think, and when, obviously the younger you are, you're not going to be as advanced. That's okay. But the most important thing is to just let kids think for themselves. It's super easy to get into a habit of, when they ask you a question, to just answer the question. In order to make an informed decision about any complex problem, especially when it concerns the media, you need to have a foundation of critical thinking. Kids develop critical thinking on their own if you let them. The ability for them to look at a problem and figure out what's going on, you can answer any question that they have, but if they don't think it through for themselves, you rob them of that chance. So this goes back to helping is hurting. If they're asking you how to solve a problem and you just tell them, then they're not using their brains at all. It's super easy to do that, but it's not very helpful. Instead, we'd like to answer open-ended questions, that is, not a yes or a no, get them to talk and give them a little bit of leeway, give them some rope to come up with their own ideas, and then we'll jump in and offer whatever feedback. And that seems to be a pretty good way to get people to think critically about things. It always helps to question your own assumptions and biases. And there are a lot of biases out there. Whenever I feel that I have a handle on what's going on in the world, I like to humble myself by going to the list of cognitive biases on Wikipedia. It is shocking just how many ways our world can be altered through this weird perception that our brains are really terrible sometimes at being able to perceive the world. I think evolutionarily speaking, we were really good at it, and it helped us in, fleeing tigers and whatnot. But now, our ability to look at a situation and see it in a completely different way than how it really is does not always help us. So I try to nurture a very strong sense of humility, to remind myself that new information has the potential to change my position on something. It doesn't always do that, but it has the potential. I have to remind myself of that all the time. Yeah, sure, it's easy to think that the world is one way and will always be that way. That is so simple. I don't think that the world is that black and white. It's actually quite gray. In college, I made a list of 17 common logical fallacies into a chart. I was the editor for my department's newspaper, which was European Cultural Studies. And so one of the things that we did was a list of every common logical fallacy. And a lot of these fallacies we know by name. Ad hominem attacks, straw man. Some of them are a little bit weird and not quite so obvious. And with any logical inconsistency, you can prove whatever you want. So it's super important to understand what those logical fallacies are and spot them immediately when someone uses them. That's one of the ways that you can encourage logical fallacy detection and encouraging critical thinking. So there is a book called Getting to Yes, and in it, he has this whole bit about how there was a time in human history where fires were just accepted as a common occurrence. If there's a fire, the whole city might burn down. That's what you do. That's how you live with it. At some point, we just decided that's not okay. We have the ability, if we think far enough in advance, we can prepare for this and prevent it before it starts, or before it starts getting out of control. And at some point, humans will get to that same point with conflict resolution. If we can accept that it's just never okay to have a knockdown, drag out fight. And in a sense, we've already kind of gotten there with, we had the police to call like, oh, there's something, the police get involved and stop it before a murder happens. But if we could teach on a micro level, okay, we're having conflict. I mean, conflict is a natural part of life. You're going to have conflict with someone at some point. So how do you resolve it? What are the steps that you need to take? And so understanding how to deal with conflicts in a healthy and respectful way that leaves everyone feeling like, wow, we had a conflict and we got past that. That's awesome. How do we do that again? If we have a conflict again, how do we solve that problem? One of the ways is, again, it's about active listening. When people feel heard, they don't feel like they have to raise their voice. I understand that must be stressful for you. Can you explain to me why do you feel so strongly about that? And just listen. People want to be heard. They want to be seen. Everyone wants to be seen. It's just a fact. And if they're not seen, they get increasingly frustrated until finally they start yelling, they start raising their voices, and the logical conclusion is it leads to physical violence. You can't hear what I'm saying. Hey, you can't hear, and people just get louder and more. So if you want to short circuit that, you need to listen to people. It's so obvious, right? When you say it, it's so obvious. It's one of the reasons why we keep having conflict. People are not listening. People are not engaging. People are not trying to reiterate what the other person is saying and then mutually resolve conflict. It is a skill. Learning how to resolve a conflict is a skill. Everyone needs to very clearly communicate what they need, what they want, and then come to some sort of a resolution. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you check out the next video in the series by clicking on the subscribe link below. If you have any questions or maybe I forgot something, go ahead and type it in the comments and I'll try and reply if I can. And until next time, make sure you remember the ABCs of life. Always be curious. See you next time.